Toyota's new HiLux is far from all new, but it has had some major changes, including updates to the interior, a new electric power steering system, and a much improved unladen ride. But will all that and more be enough to keep its remodeled nose at the front of the pack? Let's find out. The new HiLux isn't hugely different from its predecessor, but the most obvious change to the look of the car is this front end styling, which it's a bit less aggressive than some of its competitors. The other thing worth noting as well is that it's quite a narrow vehicle. In fact, the only other one that comes to mind that's narrower is the Triton, which is about 20mm narrower. And that's a bit of an upside if you're thinking about getting through traffic and space on the road and that sort of thing. With still a 3.5 tonne towing capacity and a strong payload, it's not a bad compromise when you're thinking about whether you really do need all of that width and all of that presence on the road. Around the back of the HiLux, the styling still makes it very clear that this is what it is, a Toyota HiLux. But there has also been some changes as well, which include this little step in the rear corner of the tub, the revised tail lights, and on the SR5 models and up, you also get this soft opening and soft closing tailgate, which makes it feel a little bit more controlled when you lower it down. But overall, no big surprises. Oh, and by the way, it's great to see that Toyota's put a plaque in the ute tray advocating for fuel safety, especially these days when people might happen to be stockpiling fuel. Inside the HiLux, look, there isn't too much particularly surprising or new, apart from the 12.3-inch infotainment screen we've got here. It's good to see that it's not completely screen focused in terms of those important and regularly used functions, like, for example, the audio volume control. There's also a toggle on the steering wheel. It would be nice to have an actual volume dial that you can rotate, but it's not a huge deal either. There are some other thoughtful practicality related features of the interior. 2 grab handles for both the driver and the passenger, and also in the back, both outside rear passengers get 2 grab handles as well, just for when the going gets particularly rough. Other things like the square cup holders in the front here that should fit your 600ml carton of Oak, if that's what you're drinking. They also handle a regular cup as well. There's also on this SR5 the small, what looks to be a glove box, but it's also chilled. You won't get much more than a few maybe chocolates in there to keep cool if you need to, but it's at least it's somewhere cool to keep those things that need to stay that way. There's a regular glove box underneath that as well. And in this particular SR5 HiLux, it's got the premium interior pack as well, which means the front seats have got leather inserts and they're also heated as well. But most SR5s will come with a nicely finished cloth interior. Apart from that, look, it's a sea of black and grey, which is probably good for keeping things clean in a car like this. And as the cliche goes, things fall to hand quite easily, so it's easy to find those functions and buttons that you need to find quickly when you're on the go. The centre console of the HiLux, it's pretty practical, and particularly with regards to charging your various devices. There's 2 USB-C charging ports in the centre of the console here. There's also a wireless charging pad. There's actually a 240-volt, 300-watt power plug, as well as a regular 12-volt power socket too inside there in case you want to charge laptops or whatever. There's also this cup holder section here, which, like on a lot of cars, you can take out and put more bits and pieces in there as well if you want to sacrifice 2 cup holding spots. There's some good sized bottle holders down in the door pockets as well. So the fit and finish of the HiLux is very functional and business-like, and it doesn't seem to be really trying to impress people in the same way that perhaps a similarly priced Chinese ute might be doing, particularly things like the size of the screen and the interior finishes around the door handles, which are just black plastic in this SR5, and it's a different story with those polished metal finishes that you see in those kind of vehicles. So it really does ram home the focus of the HiLux on value in those really important areas. At around $80,000 for the rugged X or the Rogue, the HiLux almost looks affordable, next to the $84,000 Ford Ranger Wildtrak, but that does come with a 3-litre V6. But there's no getting away from the fact that the HiLux is now one of the most expensive dual cab utes in the market, especially when you compare it to some of the cheaper and maybe more specced out looking interiors that you see in the newer comers to the market. The flip side to that is the proven reliability and the familiarity with the drivetrain in the new HiLux, and of course the dealer network that supports the maintenance of this drivetrain. So in terms of value for money, it really comes down to what you value more. One of the most significant changes with the new HiLux is the addition of electric power steering. We're in some pretty soft sand here, so steering feel really isn't a thing on this sort of surface, but on the road it does make quite a difference. And for an electric power steering system, it is reasonably responsive, and you don't lose too much of that steering feel in this setup, which has got a rack parallel system. It's not a bad compromise. The HiLux has got a 5-star ANCAP safety rating and relatively recent rating as well. That does give you some peace of mind that the vehicle is going to look after you in terms of helping you avoid a crash and looking after you if you are unfortunate enough to be in one, and even in some cases for other road users as well. An upside of the electric power steering system in the new HiLux is that it has brought with it a type of driver monitoring that's not overzealous. For example, where it overcorrects, wants to put you in the centre of a lane when you already are close to it anyway. The HiLux doesn't have a centre diff, so it means that you can't drive it on a sealed road with all-wheel drive engaged without winding up the transmission and causing damage. It does have a lockable rear diff, but that's only able to be engaged in low range, and it might be seen as a positive by some drivers to have that able to be locked in four-wheel drive high range, or even in two-wheel drive if you want to not engage four-wheel drive but still drive at higher speed with that extra traction on loose surfaces. We're going through some pretty soft sand here, and the road tyres are struggling a little bit. We're in 4 high and it's getting through things pretty well, but being a load carrying four-wheel drive as well, put it this way, you're feeling the bumps and there's a bit less compliance than you might get in other four-wheel drives that aren't rated to carry 965 kilos in the ute tray. I haven't had any real bogging down through some of this really soft sand, which is the death knell that people who do a lot of four-wheel driving know pretty well, that if you keep feeding the power on, you're going to go down, and we're not really feeling that, and it's getting through it pretty well. So what do we like about the new HiLux? Well, the interior update was both overdue and of course welcome. The active safety features strike a great balance between being effective but also not too distracting, so a big thumbs up there. And the little practicality improvements like the rear step are really handy. As for what we don't like, well, the 48-volt system in the HiLux does provide some helpful extra punch, but it doesn't really scare the Ranger or the Amarok V6s. And all-wheel drive capability on sealed surfaces would also bring it in line with some of its competitors. There's also the $80,000 plus price tag on the Rugged X and the Rogue. The HiLux has had some important updates, especially to the interior. The ride is much improved for everyday driving in the high spec models, and the styling changes have kept it looking fresh. It's a compelling ute, but with rivals boasting more performance for the money, it's also not the only one.